Morning, everyone. Canada has just gone through a week of blockades and systemic shutting down of our vital rail lines, rail industry. And both Via Rail and CN have had to shut Eastern service to a bunch of their tracks. And that's really not good. Not good for business confidence, not good for store shelves, not good for oil and gas. And I'm going to show you a lot of that stuff. But this is what Justin Trudeau says about that. National Post is reporting, and this was published yesterday, February 14th. Today is February 15th. Canada doesn't tell police what to do, Trudeau says, of rail blockades. Amid pressure to end Indigenous protest blockades of vital Canadian rail links, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said the disruptions must be resolved through dialogue, not by ordering in the police. Trudeau acknowledged the difficulties the blockades have caused for travelers and businesses, but he made it clear Friday the federal government had no plans to make the RCMP dismantle them. Quote, "We are not the kind of country where politicians get to tell the police what to do in operational matters," Trudeau said in Munich, Germany, where he was attending a global security conference. Quote, "We are a country that recognizes the right to protest, but we are a country of the rule of law, and we will ensure that everything is done to resolve this through dialogue and constructive outcomes." I don't think there is anybody who has seen the clip of the man trying to dismantle the garbage strewn about the highway, who was arrested by the officer, and the media person who has been repeatedly threatened with arrest. If he stays, the protesters are not being threatened in the same way, as far as I can tell from reading his tweets. But it's really interesting that Trudeau thinks that that's a display of the rule of law. It sends a message, and I think it's the message Trudeau wants to send, but it's certainly not a message of the rule of law. If the rule of law definition of the rule of law is the law is enforced equally. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter if you have brown skin or white skin or black skin, or it doesn't matter. The law is the law, and you need to abide by it, right? You must be this tall to ride. You have to abide by the laws, and if not, this person over here who the taxpayers pay to enforce those laws will arrest you. But that's not happening, right? The police officers are standing by and allowing these protesters to break the law while simultaneously using the law, the same law, to threaten people wanting to report on it and to arrest people who are dismantling the highway impediments, the blockade of the highway. I think it's absolutely incredible, and it definitely sends a message. It is not a message that we are a country of the rule of law. Here's Spencer Fernando, and he says, Justin Trudeau really expects us to think that the federal government can't control the RCMP, but can control what news and opinions Canadians read on the internet. Who could possibly believe the bullshit emanating from that fool? Yeah, Spencer is not pulling any punches today. Here is the other potential fallout for this. CTV News is reporting, and this is yesterday as well, 2:30 p.m. Propane shortage feared if blocked rail lines persist. The drop in temperatures that hit most regions of Quebec on Friday increased Association Québécois de Propane, AQP, concerns about the railway line blockages in Eastern Canada. On Thursday, the Canadian National Railway Company, CN, announced the gradual cessation of freight train traffic in Eastern Canada due to several days of Indigenous protests near the tracks. It's on the tracks, CTV. This could lead to new gas shortages, according to the Association Québécois de Propane. The organization recognizes that the Quebec winter has been mild so far, but reminded that a cold spell could change the scenario quickly. So they're just warning of exactly what the strike that brought the government to stop that, right? Like, remember how quickly the strike ended when the propane was in jeopardy, when it was really serious, when the chips are down? That's what capitalism does. Like, this is not, these people are insane, right? Like, the terrorists who are trying to usurp the Wet'suwet'en hereditary chiefs, which is such a ridiculous thing. We're not like, yeah, man, keep that king in power. Yay. His dad was the king, and he should now be king because his dad was the king. We don't do that here. We're a democratic society. So this whole hereditary chiefs thing, no, they tried to be elected, and they were not elected. Instead, the elected chiefs were, and the elected chiefs are for the pipeline. So these Wet'suwet'en people are just being usurped and used by these anarchists and whatever, and these dead-eyed people who are part of the climate doomsday cult, and that's not my words, that's Rex Murphy's words, and we're going to read them in just a minute. But part of that climate doomsday cult who are allowing themselves to be used in this way because they believe that what they're doing is correct, or whatever. preventing people from getting to work is going to do what exactly to reduce emissions? I don't know. But they think that, yeah, stolen land and climate justice, blah, blah, blah. It's so dumb. It's just dumb. Anyway, they've been usurped. They're being used. And it's inappropriate for the Canadian government to use the laws and the structure in place, the police forces that are in place to enforce the laws in this case. It's just beyond the pale. It is absolutely insane. It's like bowing to the leadership of a regime that killed a whole bunch of your citizens a couple of weeks later. Oh yeah, that happened, and we'll get there. Here's Rex Murphy's opinion piece on what's going on. This is National Post. Climate zealots have taken Canada hostage, and our PM is missing in action. I'm familiar with the absentee landlords from grade school history. The concept of an absentee prime minister is a brand new one to me. Justin Trudeau has been a week now waltzing around Africa, while day by day back here in a carbon tax Canada, the country is seizing up. For the same past 7 days, apparently, Canada has been under the administration of what the media insists on calling anti-pipeline forces. Anti-pipeline is far too narrow. These are anti-industry, anti-energy, anti-Alberta, climate change, save the worlders who have been harassing the country for years. The difference is in the past week, they've upped their opposition, and from one end of the country to the other, decided to muscle their way to a victory by a storm of blockades, protests, traffic obstruction, and in the case of Victoria, BC, actually shutting down the People's Legislature. I scroll down a little bit. When there is a national crisis, and there is a national crisis, to whom do we justly look for a resolution? Why, the Prime Minister of the nation. Instead of leadership in this case, however, we get a statement that surely implies he thinks the resolution is in some other hands. Further, in the same statement, and I love this, he called for, quote, all parties to dialogue. Whenever in any really tense situation a politician hauls out the infinitive to dialogue, you may take it to the bank, he has not a clue about how to handle it. What's to dialogue? Is it defying court injunctions? Is it barring your deputy prime minister from pursuing her duties? Do you want to have a chat about shutting down a provincial legislator? Bringing the commerce of a nation to a standstill by rail blockades? Threatening a great energy project that has gone through all the tests and assessments and which holds vast promise of economic benefits and jobs? Watching the police forces of the nation stand by in perfect impotence before eco-radicals? Making a joke out of the so highly touted rule of law while the country seizes up under pressure from zealots? How did Canada get to this point? Easy. The elevation of the doomsday cult of global warming, the insistence that Canada has some unique and precious role in saving the planet, the hostility to the oil industry that is the logical extension of that attitude has given vast license to anti-oil types to more or less do what they want. And now they are. I scroll down. Environmentalists think they're a group apart. If 10 plumbers shut down a railway, or if loggers shut down the BC legislature, or if oil workers decided to shut down Canada, the RCMP and every security force in the nation would round them up, clap on the handcuffs, and stow them away in a jail cell in a jiffy. But a few native bands and the always available professional protesters who we have seen active since the days of the Seattle riots decided to ride on the oil issue, and everyone in authority stands aside mute and fearful. And I think, to me, that points to how powerful that wedge issue is, right? Back to Mr. Murphy's opinion piece. I scroll down. And let me make something else clear. It is by no means that the oil industry that is paying the price for the environmental obsession of the present Liberal government. Head out west and talk to farmers, talk to loggers, talk to downtown business people, taxi drivers, waitresses, talk to anyone. The so-called carbon tax is a bomb. It does nothing but put extra strain on everyone. Farmers can't buy fuel to dry their grain and save their crop without tossing in thousands of extra dollars for the holy gods of global warming. And doing so, it should be mentioned, while temperatures are a balmy minus 40 and minus 50 degrees centigrade. It is a policy as a kind of madness. And I agree. I scroll down again. And he just makes the point at the end of the article here. He says, not 1 in 100 Canadians, and I'm being generous, gives a damn about Canada getting a seat on the Security Council. Yeah, that's true. Nobody cares. And yet, here's what Trudeau is planning. Here's John Leotard. Sorry if I've got that wrong. He says, Canada's back. To get Senagal's vote for the Security Council, all we had to do is agree to help them develop their oil and gas sector and shut up about the fact that it's illegal to be gay there. Yay! And I like that because it just frames things in such a ridiculous bent, right? Like, We can't develop Canada's oil and gas. We can import Saudi Arabian oil and gas. We can help Senegal develop their oil and gas, but we can't get a pipeline built. And we have rail cars blowing up monthly in Saskatchewan because BC wants to do a spill assessment. It just doesn't make sense. Here's the Globe and Mail reporting on immigration driving Canada's urban growth. They say, this is from 2 days ago, immigrants drive Canada's urban growth as housing costs linked to Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal exodus. This is a dry article. I'm not going to read this article because I think I'm already too long. I'm not going to read this article. But fundamentally, people are leaving Toronto. They're leaving Toronto because it's too expensive, and by a lot. So it's a concerning trend, and it's something being driven because of our policies around immigration in Canada. And I think that that's a conversation that needs to be had, and it's one that's being shut down. Here's another one. CBC Kids reporting this. I haven't read this article just because it just makes me angry that it's in CBC Kids. But here's the reality of what's going on. I've just been evacuated from Wuhan, teen from China, on why he's in Canada. 15-year-old has never been to Canada, even though he has citizenship. So remember the people who were going to be evacuated from the quarantine center of Wuhan for the novel coronavirus? This is showing what the effect of having people who fly into Canada specifically to have babies is. We've got Canadian citizens who have never been to Canada, who have grown up in China their whole life, and who are using their Canadian citizenship to leave China for the first time to come to Canada. And that's okay with everybody? That seems crazy. That seems like not the intention of a country, right? It just seems wild. So I'm not going to go through this article. The link is in the description. It's interesting, I'm sure, but I just wanted to show the real life effects of the lax policies and what that's going to do to the demographics of this country, right? Like, yeah, there's a big problem on the horizon, a big problem. So the last story for this morning. Remember when Iran shot down that plane with a missile, and then they denied that they shot down the plane with the missile? January 10th, Global News is reporting Iran denies shooting down Ukrainian plane, wants Canada, US to release data, right? And originally there was 176 Canadians, and I think it ended up being 139 or something to that effect. And I think ultimately it was, if you go by Iran's version of citizenship, they don't recognize dual citizens. They would say there were 2 Canadians on board or 3 Canadians on board, but Canada recognized 130 or something like 140. But here it is. New York Times is reporting Iran admits firing 2 missiles at jet and says it's studying the effect. The effect of 2 missiles on a jet is everybody on board died and the plane crashed. That's what the effect is. But don't worry, there's other international incidents. Here's Justin Trudeau with a family member of the victim, and here's Justin Trudeau shaking hands with the Iranian foreign minister. And, well, we're going to see him bowing and stuff in a second, but link is in the description for those pictures. Here's the video. It says, I know, this is Brian Lilly saying, I know that Justin Trudeau and the whole Canadian government needs to cooperate with Iran for the sake of the families still dealing with the murder of everyone aboard Flight 752, but this is wrong. The smiling, bowing of the head, the subservience. Okay, so, and he apologizes for saying, oh, I don't want to, he said, I don't want to interrupt. You know, you guys were talking. I didn't want to interrupt anything. So just, it's really quiet, but here it is.
Very nice. Another conversation.
We just started.
We just started. I won't interrupt too much, but I just want to tell you how pleased I am that they
see you. How are you?
Very nice.
Right. That's how you. Whew, wow. Isn't that weird? Isn't that strange? Isn't that an odd way to respond to? Do you think Trump would do that? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Thanks for watching, everybody. Check out CanadaPoly.com, check out CanadaReport.co, and have a wonderful, wonderful